108 Willow Creek Drive. In the picturesque and seemingly tranquil town of Willow Creek, darkness is not merely the absence of light, it is an entity that permeates every corner, an unwelcome guest that sends shivers down the spines of every resident. Neither Willow Creek is not just a location on the map, it is a place where whispered tales of the supernatural intertwine seamlessly with the tapestry of daily life, leaving an unforgettable mark on the town's essence. It was a foggy evening, autumn casting its melancholic hues, when a young couple named Emma and David made the life-changing decision to move to Willow Creek, following their marriage. Their new abode, 108 Willow Creek Drive, an aging and decrepit house on the outskirts of town, was supposed to be their fresh start. Little did they know of the dark history surrounding this seemingly harmless domicile. The house exuded an unsettling aura, characterized by creaking floorboards and drafts that carried whispers through the night. As the shadows grew longer and the chill set in one evening, Emma stumbled upon a concealed room in the attic, a room colder than the rest, ostensibly humming with an unsettling energy. Within this mysterious space, she discovered an old weathered journal titled Samuel. Its pages were filled with the desperate scribblings of a previous occupant, revealing a harrowing tale of evil that had befallen the town. Dread washed over Emma like a crashing wave, and a sense of urgency propelled her to show the disturbing writings to David. However, as David entered the attic, a sinking feeling settled in the pit of Emma's stomach. She trembled in the hallway below, listening to David's reaction to the ominous writings. To her disbelief, he announced that the pages were blank. Emma snatched the journal from his hands as David descended the attic steps. Vigorously flipping through the pages, Emma's eyes widened as she realized that the writings had indeed vanished. This enigmatic occurrence only added to the unease that had already settled in their hearts. Emma and David found themselves caught in a whirlwind of bizarre phenomena in the ensuing days. Lights flickered inexplicably, shadowy figures darted in their peripheral vision, and eerie sounds reverberated through the house. In the corridor, footsteps echoed across the wooden floors at night. Yet, they found no one upon investigation. David, something is definitely not right. We haven't had a peaceful night's sleep since we moved in. It's been weeks, Emma cried out, her voice tinged with desperation. I admit it feels like something out of the ordinary is going on, but let's not jump to conclusions. Perhaps we're just letting the stress of the move get to us, David replied, attempting to offer solace as he enveloped Emma in a comforting hug. That night, Emma found herself entangled in a restless sleep. Amid her tossing and turning, a sudden chill grasped her ankle, jolting her awake to a ghastly sight. A tall, crooked, faceless woman standing at the edge of their bed. Paralyzed with fear, Emma watched in terror as the woman's featureless face slowly twisted from the center, contorting into blank eyes above a silent scream. Ah! Emma's scream pierced through the quiet night, prompting David to jolt awake in utter shock. What? Emma, what's happening? You don't see her? Emma stammered, her entire body trembling in fear. See who? What are you talking about? David asked frantically. Her, Emma yelled, pointing frantically toward the edge of the bed. Blinking rapidly, David stares into the darkness at the edge of the bed, seeing nothing but the cabinets hiding against the walls of the dark room. Babe? I don't know how to tell you this, but there's nothing there. David, please! Something is terribly wrong with this house, Emma replied, tears streaming down her face as she clung to David for comfort. All right, let's try to rest for the night. It could just be a nightmare. Tomorrow morning we'll look into this. I promise. David reassured her, his voice attempting to quell her fears. Emma wiped her tears with a reluctant nod, and the two of them attempted to regain some semblance of composure and return to their restless slumber. As dawn broke on the following day, the couple found themselves in the heart of the town. Within its quaint library, sitting across from the town's historian, they were delving deep into the twisted history of their new home, Willow Creek, hoping to shed light on the darkness that had enshrouded their lives since they had crossed the threshold of 108 Willow Creek Drive. The historian began to spin a tale of eerie occurrences, sinister secrets, and the deep-rooted malevolence that had plagued the town for generations. Emma and David listened intently, their eyes widening with every chilling detail, as they realized the depth of the darkness that had trapped them within Willow Creek's clutches. It's time for tale number 2 of Willow Creek. The history of Willow Creek. It began centuries ago when a group of brave settlers sought to establish a flourishing town. Nathaniel Willow, a natural-born leader, led this ambitious endeavor. Their motivations were driven by a desire for power and wealth, aspirations that led them to form a perilous pact with an enigmatic entity cloaked in darkness. This entity, hidden amongst the twisted trees, hungered insatiably for souls and offered the settlers untold riches in exchange for nourishment, ensuring the prosperity of the burgeoning town as long as its insatiable appetite was sated. As the sands of time trickled forth, the once thriving town began to wither under the ominous shadow of the entity's influence. Crops failed, children mysteriously vanished, and an evil presence permeated the air circulating through the streets. The townspeople bore the burden of this affliction in silence, shrouding their fear and grief, for speaking of the entity meant inviting unspeakable horrors. The entity's insatiable desires manifested through demands for sacrifices, selecting victims at its whimsical discretion. One fateful night, with the moon hanging low and crimson in the sky, young Sarah, the daughter of the town's mayor, fell prey to its vicious grasp. Sarah disappeared without a trace, leaving behind only the harrowing echoes of her screams reverberating through the empty streets. Fearing the entity's wrath, the townspeople collectively turned a blind eye to the nefarious occurrences that plagued their once peaceful abode. However, one man, Samuel, could no longer endure the torment inflicted upon his community. Fueled by a determination to free Willow Creek from the clutches of this curse, Samuel delved into the forbidden archives of Willow Creek's history, unearthing the town's darkest secret. Armed with newfound knowledge, he embarked on a treacherous journey to confront the evil entity. The entity, wise to the threat posed by Samuel, unleashed a relentless wave of terror upon the town. Shadows danced ominously along the streets, unearthly shrieks pierced the stillness of the night, and the very air turned as cold as death itself. Samuel was compelled to barricade himself within the confines of his home as the suffocating terror inched ever closer. With the dawn of a new day, Willow Creek emerged from the shroud of darkness. The eerie shadows dissipated, and the chilling shrieks subsided. However, a grim scene appeared in the attic of a forsaken house. The lifeless body of Samuel sat propped against the wall, his face marred by blood trails, his jaw hung open, frozen in an eternal scream. I'm sure the two of you have put it all together at this point. That god-forsaken house is now known as 108 Willow Creek Drive. Although it may be a little too late, I'll warn the two of you. That entity doesn't take too kindly to new people living there. If you're asking me, I'd leave town instantly, before you're hooked in for not just life, but for generations. Tale number 3. The Curse of Willow Creek. In 1690, deep within the heart of the untamed wilderness of the New World, an enclave named Willow Creek endured as a testament to human tenacity and survival. Yet it was more than just a hamlet. It was a fragile bastion, teetering precariously on the brink of extinction, grappling incessantly with the relentless trials imposed by the unforgiving and harsh wilderness. With its vice-like grip, the environment subjected the people to a daily ordeal of survival. Their crops withered, their livestock perished, and the looming spectre of famine cast a dark and oppressive shadow upon the beleaguered town. In the midst of this tumultuous era, a figure named Nathaniel Willow rose to prominence within the community. Driven by an intoxicating blend of desperation and greed, Nathaniel was consumed by an unwavering determination to secure his town's prosperity and continued existence. One fateful night, when the moon obscured its luminous face behind a shroud of darkness, and the wind howled through the desolate streets, Nathaniel embarked on a journey deep into the heart of the forest. He clutched in trembling hands a cursed grimoire, an ancient relic passed down through countless generations of his lineage. Summoning courage from the depths of his soul, Nathaniel dared to unlock the secrets inscribed within the grimoire's pages. With a heart ablaze with fiery determination, he summoned forth famous Malum, a towering and grotesque demon whose eyes burned with pernicious intent. The demon snarled and interrogated Nathaniel's motivations, setting the stage for a pivotal exchange. "What compels you to release me?" The demon's words resonated ominously. In a moment of desperation, Nathaniel disclosed his desire to lead his town to prosperity and success, seeking the demon's assistance. Famous Malum, in all its sinister grandeur, proposed a malevolent pact. A pact that promised unimaginable wealth, bountiful harvests, and unparalleled prosperity in exchange for the souls of the townspeople, to be offered in a dark and unholy ritual. Driven by his insatiable thirst for power and success, Nathaniel succumbed to the allure of this wicked bargain. The deal was sealed, and the town of Willow Creek bore witness to an astonishing transformation. With the infernal pact in place, the once feeble town began to flourish. Cops thrived and multiplied. The settlement expanded, and the townspeople reveled in newfound affluence. However, as time wore on, it became clear the famous Malum's insatiable hunger could not be satisfied by sporadic sacrifices alone. The demon's unquenchable appetite grew, plunging the once thriving community into perpetual terror and despair. They lived daily on the precipice of panic, aware that the demon's return and subsequent demand for more souls was an inescapable fate. On stormy nights, when the heavens themselves seemed to weep in anguish, with lightning flickering across the skies and bone-chilling wind, famous Malum reappeared, casting a harrowing shadow over the beleaguered town. The earth trembled as the demon bellowed, instilling fear in the townspeople's hearts. Helpless, unseen forces dragged from their homes, their desperate cries echoing in the night. In the face of this abomination, Nathaniel, weighed down by guilt and remorse, attempted to resist the demon's insatiable demands. But his efforts were in vain, for the demon had come to claim what was rightfully owed. The air grew heavy with malignance as the demon feasted on the souls of the innocent, their anguished screams a haunting reminder of the wicked pact that had doomed Willow Creek. As the first rays of dawn broke, the once thriving town lay in ruins. Once a tightly knit community, its population had been reduced to a ghostly, hollow shell of its former self. The remaining townspeople huddled together, scarred but alive, bearing witness to the devastation that had engulfed them. Among them stood Nathaniel Willow, covered in the blood of his former followers, a man tormented by the consequences of his choices. In the aftermath, as the remnants of the town grappled with the enormity of the tragedy, a pair of crimson eyes vanished into the dense forest. The ominous words, left by famous Malum, hung in the air, a chilling reminder to Nathaniel and the survivors. Never forget your end of the bargain. Old Willow's Cabin. Once upon a chilling October night, in the picturesque town of Willow Creek, nestled amidst the autumnal embrace of trees shedding their leaves in the crisp, refreshing air, a young, bronze-skinned girl named Maya resided. Her eyes, the color of rich earth, radiated with an insatiable curiosity and a thirst for adventure that seemed to transcend her tender age. Maya's restless spirit often sought refuge in the vast embrace of the woods that bordered the town. It was a realm shrouded in enigma, woven into a tapestry of rumors and gossip spun by the townsfolk. On this particular night, the moon hung in the sky like a vigilant sentinel, casting haunting shadows that painted an eerie atmosphere across the neighborhood. Maya's fascination for the enigmatic and unexplored took a firm grip on her. The allure of the forest's unfathomable depths beckoned to her, and armed with nothing more than a flashlight and youthful bravery as her guiding beacon, she embarked on a quest to conquer her fears and explore the uncharted. A symphony of leaves crunching underfoot and twigs snapping accompanied Maya as she ventured deeper into the shadowy woods. The wind, whispering secrets from ages past, sent shivers racing down her spine, causing goosebumps to ripple across her skin. The rustling trees seemed to sway in harmony, as if they were beckoning her further into the heart of darkness. Guided by the elusive winds and the play of shadows, she stumbled upon an ancient, dilapidated cabin, its time-worn facade hidden by years of abandonment. The cabin's door creaked and groaned in protest as Maya pushed it ajar, the eerie echo resonating through the stillness of the night as she stepped into the dimly lit interior. Her flashlight struggled to pierce the darkness that clung to the forgotten relics within. Cobweb-covered furniture and floating dust particles greeted her gaze, endowing the room with an otherworldly aura reminiscent of phantoms from the past. Undeterred by the ominous atmosphere, Maya pressed forward in her exploration. In the depths of the cabin, she stumbled upon a journal with faded pages, the handwriting barely legible, but hinting at the strangeness that lurked within these walls. The entries spoke of inexplicable occurrences and an evil presence that only blessed artifacts could repel. Fear gnawed at her heart, but a fierce determination to uncover the truth pushed her onward. In the stillness of that cabin, a soft, distant whisper emerged from the hollow halls, cautioning her to leave. Maya's curiosity caused her to ignore the plea, which led her to a concealed room at the end of the corridor. As she entered, she beheld a secret chamber adorned with arcane symbols and worn-out relics, each exuding an aura of ancient malevolence. An old mirror stood out among the artifacts, its surface ominously reflecting a shadowy figure that was not hers. Terrified, Maya attempted to flee, but the door slammed shut, sealing her fate within the clutches of the malevolent force. The figure in the mirror began to materialize, a ghastly blackened form taking shape and haunting the chamber. Panic surged within Maya as she recollected the dire warnings from the journal. In her frantic search for an escape, she overturned old, wrinkled papers on her desk and tugged at the rusted handles of each drawer. In a stroke of fortune, one drawer revealed a strange pendant, an encircled cross exuding an aura of mystic power. Clutching the pendant, she felt an inexplicable strength and courage welling up within her. With the relic clutched tightly, Maya faced the entity with newfound determination. Raising the pendant, she watched as the figure recoiled, vanishing into the shadows from whence it came. Seizing the opportunity, she sprinted towards the door, her trembling hands fumbling with the lock just in the nick of time as the ancient cabin succumbed to ruin and collapse inches behind her. As Maya caught her breath, the weight of the encounter settled upon her. She surveyed the remnants of the fallen building, the shattered wood seeming to breathe and stir. Suddenly, a shadowy figure rose from the wreckage, sending chills down her spine. The adventure was far from over. The enigma of the night continued to unfold, leaving Maya on the precipice of a newfound journey into the unknown. The Screech of Willow Creek. The autumn evening painted the landscape in russet and gold shades as the sun descended below the horizon. Daniel, a weary traveler, returned home, his footsteps echoing through the quiet woods surrounding his cabin. The air carried a chill that prickled his skin, and the wind, an eerie and mournful presence, howled as if whispering secrets only it understood. As Daniel approached his rustic haven, a peculiar unease settled over him. Like an invisible shroud that clung to his every step, he inserted his key into the door, its weathered wood resisting his touch for a moment before yielding to his insistence. The twist and turn of the knob felt like the turn of a page in a thriller, the suspense building as the door creaked open, revealing the dimly lit interior. Inside, the cabin appeared as it always had, yet subtle disturbances caught his keen eye. A chair sat askew, its back no longer parallel to the table it belonged to, and a book resting on the floor, out of its usual resting place on the bookshelf. His rational mind tried to dismiss these anomalies as the result of his own forgetfulness. Still, the disturbing feeling in the pit of his stomach remained, an ominous presence he couldn't shake. The encroaching night swiftly descended, swallowing the last vestiges of daylight in its inky embrace. Shadows danced like phantoms on the walls, their movements unpredictable and menacing, mirroring the whirlwind of thoughts inside Daniel's mind. While he sat by the fireplace, its flickering flames casting an uncertain glow upon the room, he detected faint rustling noises from the woods outside. At first he brushed it aside, attributing the sounds to the rustling of leaves in the autumn breeze, a mere symphony of nature. But with each passing hour, the rustling grew bolder, like a whispered secret evolving into an insistent demand for attention. The shadows deepened and elongated, forming grotesque silhouettes that seemed to mock Daniel's growing unease. Then, from the depths of the forest, a sound erupted, so bone-chilling and otherworldly that it sent a jolt through every fiber of his being. It was a screech, an agonizing wail, that cut through the night like a knife through silk. Birds startled from their slumber in the trees, fled their branches in disarray, creating a cacophony of wing beats and alarmed cries. For Daniel, it was as if the very earth beneath him quivered, and his heart raced in terrified rhythm, an anxious question lingering in his mind. What kind of creature could produce such a dreadful and unnatural sound? The night wore on, and the eerie screeching persisted, its relentless crescendo mounting Daniel's unease to a fever pitch. He moved with a sense of urgency, locking every door and window as if it were the act of sealing a pact with an unseen menace. Yet the screech refused to be silenced, echoing like an evil spirit, an otherworldly siren's call that lured him deeper into the dread abyss. As the night's darkness pressed closer, the screech grew louder and more invasive, like a presence that had infiltrated the very walls of his cabin. Daniel, his heart hammering against his ribcage, paced his home in frantic circles, feeling like he was losing control over his reality. Though muffled by the walls, the creature's wail seemed to seep through the very pores of the cabin, tormenting his senses with its eerie persistence. Finally, the screech reached its crescendo, a nerve-shattering climax that had Daniel frozen in place in the middle of the hallway, his broad, fearful eyes locked onto a seemingly ordinary white wall, starkly contrasting the nightmare unraveling around him. And yet, it was this very wall that became the vessel through which the creature's horrifying presence made itself known. Summoning every ounce of courage left in him, Daniel ventured into the kitchen, his trembling hand clutching a large, gleaming knife. The flashlight in his other hand pierced the darkness, casting long, tremulous shadows that danced and contorted on the walls. As he plunged the knife into the drywall, a putrid stench, fetid and nauseating, engulfed him, almost as if the very walls of the cabin exhaled their secret horrors. The feeble beam of the flashlight revealed a sight that defied the boundaries of his imagination. A grotesque creature, hunched and twisted, with a monstrous countenance, its eyes bloodshot and malevolent, bore into his soul, and a gnarly, crooked smile spread across its grotesque face, as though it reveled in the terror it instilled. Daniel, frozen with terror that surpassed all reason, stumbled back, his mind unable to fully comprehend the monstrosity that had emerged from the very walls of his sanctuary. As if hungry for fear, the creature lunged forward, its razor-sharp claws reaching for him, narrowly missing their target as he stumbled away. In a panicked frenzy, he sprinted down the dimly lit hallway, his heart pounding like a wild beast trying to break free. He reached the bedroom, his trembling hands fumbling to shut the door just in time. He heard and felt the creature's body crash into the wooden barrier, the impact reverberating through the room like a thunderclap. With frantic desperation, Daniel pushed his dresser against the door, its weight a feeble barricade against the relentless onslaught of the creature. He placed his desk chair atop the dresser, adding anything he could find in the room to fortify his precarious sanctuary. It was a feeble attempt at defense, a makeshift bulwark against a demonic force that seemed relentless and insatiable. The following hours were a harrowing descent into madness, a relentless cycle of scratching, screeching, and the constant pounding on the door. The cabin that had once been his refuge now felt like a grotesque prison, its walls closing in on him with an unforgiving grip, as though an unrelenting warden of nightmares had possessed the very structure. Weeks passed, and the world outside Daniel's cabin seemed to have forgotten him. The neighbors who had once known him as a friendly and solitary figure observed the eerie transformation from a distance. They had not seen him venture beyond his cabin's threshold in what felt like an eternity. During their daily walks, they would cast furtive glances toward Daniel's home, and what they saw sent shivers down their spine. There he stood, a haunting figure, his gaunt silhouette framed by the cabin's dimly lit window. His posture was unnatural, contorted, as though the very act of standing had become a torment. Some neighbors swore that they saw his head turn towards the window as they walked by, his eyes meeting theirs with an unsettling intensity. It was as if he had become acutely aware of their presence and existence and longed to communicate something beyond words. His gaze locked onto theirs, his eyes reflecting a darkness that chilled them to their core. As his eyes locked onto theirs, a high-pitched screech, the same unearthly wail that had tormented him, escaped from Daniel's lips. It was a sound that defied the boundaries of human vocalization, a cry of such sheer terror and anguish that it sent shivers down the passerby's spine. Whispers of Willow Creek. In the heart of a densely entangled forest, nestled within the enigmatic and eerie confines of Willow Creek, there lay a town veiled in the shroud of unending mystery. This remote hamlet, cocooned by the encircling woods, seemed more like a cryptic enigma than a settlement. Its winding pathways, overgrown with gnarled roots and moss, exhaled whispers, secrets of yore. The towering trees, ancient sentinels cloaked in mossy robes, appeared to guard an age-old riddle buried in Willow Creek's soul for generations. It was a moonless night, and the canopy of twisted branches overhead painted the landscape in an unsettling obsidian shroud. On this fateful night, the forest's hush was broken by Henry's approaching footsteps, a weary traveler who had, by the whims of fate or some preordained design, ventured into the heart of Willow Creek. His face was etched with the weariness of countless miles, his eyes tinged with an uneasiness he couldn't quite articulate. As he drew nearer to the outskirts of the town, a peculiar sensation crept over him, dancing upon the line separating the inexplicable from the ordinary. The air thickened, and the once gentle breeze transformed into an unsettling gust that seemed to carry sinister whispers and insidious murmurings from the depths of an unseen world. In an attempt to quell the shivers racing down his spine, Henry attributed it to the exhaustion wrought by his arduous journey. Resigned to find temporary refuge, he crossed the threshold into Willow Creek. He checked into the only inn, a decrepit establishment whose dimly lit corridors echoed with the unsettling creaks of age. It was as if the very walls held within them the untold secrets of the town. With a sigh of relief, Henry retired to his room, yearning for the embrace of a dreamless night's sleep. However, sleep proved elusive for him, for as soon as he closed his eyes, he began to hear faint whispers, as soft as the sigh of the wind, as indistinct as the footfalls of distant memories. They brushed against the fringes of his consciousness, like ghostly fingers tracing invisible patterns. Initially, he dismissed them as nothing more than phantoms conjured by a weary mind, but they grew more persistent as the night wore on. The following day, the voices intensified as Henry ventured deeper into the town's heart. They wrapped around his thoughts like ethereal tendrils, haunting and persistent. He couldn't quite decipher the words, but their tone sent a chill down his spine, a symphony of dread that seemed to resonate with the very marrow of his bones. Henry's composure was slipping, the insidious whispers gnawing at the edges of his sanity. Desperate for solace, he roamed the peculiar shadowy streets of Willow Creek, but the voices clung to him like a relentless shadow, growing louder and more coherent. They spoke of horrors unimaginable, of forgotten souls and unspeakable deeds. He muttered to himself, unaware of the words that escaped his lips. The deal of Nathaniel. Famous Malam. Hungry. Feed. Him. Need. Blood. Starving. Starving. Butcher. Bodies. Hunger. Nathaniel. Famous Malam. Each phrase reverberated through his consciousness like a macabre mantra, driving him deeper into a state of confusion and despair. In a desperate bid to escape the discordance within his mind, Henry sought refuge in the town's library, a dark, antiquated building with sagging shelves and the scent of aging parchment hanging in the air. The librarian, an elderly woman with disquieting pale eyes that seemed to hold the weight of centuries, greeted him with a knowing smile. Hesitant but desperate for distraction, Henry inquired about the town's history. Like a spectral whisper, the librarian's voice unveiled the tale of Willow Creek's dark past. She spoke of the ill-fated pact the town's founder had struck with a demon, a sinister covenant that manifested itself in mass every few years, or when the demon deemed the sacrifice insufficient. Henry's heart chilled as the tale unfurled, the words weaving a tapestry of terror. The librarian recounted an age-old incident, one etched in blood and trepidation when a deranged man named Edgar Galloway had terrorized the town. He had been driven to madness by the relentless whispers of the forest, the haunting voices that echoed in Henry's own mind. Galloway believed that the trees spoke to him, unveiling the darkest secrets of the town's past. As his insanity spiraled, it culminated in a bloody massacre, the town nearly being devoured by the maw of unbridled madness. Galloway insisted that the voices demanded sacrifice to appease the ancient spirits dwelling within the forest, a demand the town had barely survived. The scars of that night were etched into the very fabric of Willow Creek, haunting its every corner. The librarian's voice grew somber as she explained that when the townspeople failed to uphold their end of Nathaniel's dreadful pact, famous Malam took matters into his own hands, using whatever means necessary to satiate his unholy hunger. This revelation sent a shiver coursing down Henry's spine, for he now understood the voices that had plagued him. He relived the horrifying descent into madness that had once consumed Edgar Galloway. Desperation clawed at Henry's soul. He had to escape the haunting clutches of Willow Creek, the eerie symphony of voices that threatened to consume him. With a heart pounding in his chest, he made a hasty exit from the library, a burning resolve to flee the town simmering in his veins. But as he stepped back into the cobblestone streets, the forest seemed to stretch its gnarled fingers to trap him once more. The louder and more insistent voices followed him like phantoms in the night. It was as if the very town itself conspired to prevent his escape. The relentless, discordant words filled his mind, drowning out his rational thoughts. He tried to block out the voices, and tried to run, but there was no escape. The utterings of forgotten souls and the unspeakable deeds echoed in his ears, drowning out the rational thoughts. He was being pulled deeper into the abyss, and the boundaries of reality itself were beginning to crumble. Finally, the inevitable happened. The voices consumed him entirely, melding with his thoughts until they were one. The last shreds of Henry's identity, his very essence, were swept away in the cacophonous torrent. Guided by the haunting symphony of voices, he found himself venturing deep into the forest, where the towering trees stood like ancient sentinels, their twisted branches interwoven like skeletal fingers. It was as though the very soul of the forest was reaching out to embrace him, to pull him into its enigmatic heart. Amidst the entangled chaos of the forest, he discovered an ancient oak, a gnarled behemoth among the twisted trees. The moonlight filtered through the branches, casting eerie, shifting shadows on the forest floor. The tree seemed to emanate an evil aura, its presence ominous and oppressive. The whispers crescendo as he approached the ancient oak, assaulting his senses with an unrelenting fervor. Henry, his mind on the brink of oblivion, placed a trembling hand on the tree's bark. What happened next was beyond comprehension. A surge of energy coursed through him. An overwhelming force threatened to consume his very being. Now reaching a deafening climax, the voices merged with his own thoughts, creating a dissonant symphony that threatened to shatter his sanity. Henry screamed a primal, guttural cry that echoed through the forest, his eyes rolling back in his head as his consciousness teetered on the precipice of madness. And then, as suddenly as it had all begun, the voices ceased. The forest of Willow Creek fell into an eerie silence, the ancient trees standing sentinel over the fallen traveler. Henry's body lay motionless on the ground, leaves and twigs cradling him like a shroud, covering yet another unfortunate soul that happened upon the evils cradled within Willow Creek. Camping in Willow Creek Forest. The arrival of autumn heralded a significant shift in the air. Its gentle descent brought a crisp chill that wrapped the world in an embrace of amber leaves and the promise of cozy fireside gatherings. For 5 childhood friends, Katie, Ben, Ashley, Mark, and Peter, this seasonal transformation was a vivid reminder of their shared memories from years past. The idea of rekindling those bonds was too tempting to resist. Thus, a nostalgic camping trip was born. The friends had assembled at the edge of the forest, where the woods met the open expanse of a grassy clearing. Their faces lit up with the unmistakable spark of excitement, and the laughter that danced between them resonated through the autumn air. It was a symphony of joy and anticipation, heralding the adventures that lay ahead. With their backpacks packed, tents erected, and a flickering campfire casting warm, flickering light around them, they embarked on a trail that had long resided in the deepest corridors of their memories. It was a path carved by countless youthful explorations, yet they now ventured forth with fresh eyes and eager hearts, unaware of the chilling terror that awaited them in the heart of the woods. As the sun dipped below the horizon, the forest around them seemed to come alive. The whispers of leaves and the eerie rustle of unseen creatures sent shivers down their spines. They huddled close to the crackling fire, its warmth a comforting embrace against the growing unease that clung to the edges of their minds. It was Katie, the keen-eyed observer of the group, who first noticed the peculiar markings on nearby trees. Strange symbols etched deep into the gnarled bark appeared as ancient as time itself. A disconcerting shiver traced its path down her spine as she studied them. She momentarily hesitated to share her discovery, for she knew that introducing such an ominous element could cast a shadow over their spirited night. Nevertheless, an unsettling blanket of discomfort settled over the campsite as the hours pressed on. The once vibrant forest now felt oppressive, its boughs and shadows hiding secrets they dared not imagine. The need to answer nature's call took Ben, the group's resident outdoorsman, away from the warmth of the campfire's glow. Armed with nothing but a flashlight and the knowledge of the wild, he ventured into the shadows. Yet, as he moved deeper into the woods, an undeniable sense of being watched began to gnaw at him. Minutes passed, but Ben did not return. Anxiety rippled through the group, and they called out his name into the thick silence that clung to the night. Then, like a blade cutting through the darkness, a gut-wrenching scream pierced the air. Panic surged through the group, coursing through their veins like a frigid river. They fumbled to grab their flashlights, and with hearts pounding, they rushed into the woods to find their missing friend. Ben was there, trembling and pale, on the edge of a small clearing. His eyes held a residual terror of his encounter, and he spoke in a voice quivering with fear. He described a monstrous creature with long, bony limbs and eyes that seemed to hold the weight of eons. The gaze of that beast had pierced his very soul, and the depths of his fear were etched across his face. The weight of dread grew heavier with each passing moment, but they understood the necessity of unity. They resolved to leave the forest immediately, and their footsteps quickened as they retraced their path. However, the forest seemed to conspire against them, the familiar trail now twisted and unrecognizable. Ashley, her voice trembling like a leaf in the wind, suggested that they temporarily split up in an attempt to find their way back. Reluctantly, they agreed, promising to meet at the trailhead. The darkness swallowed them whole as they embarked in different directions, their flashlight beams piercing the inky veil of night. Katie and Mark journeyed deeper into the forest, their hearts pounding in unison with the drumbeat of fear that echoed in their ears. Suddenly, a bone-chilling gust of wind swept through the trees, carrying an unnerving growl that set their skin on edge. Katie turned, and there it was, the gnarly creature, its eyes aflame like burning coals, hungering for their souls. They ran, their terror fueling every step. Though their footsteps were as soft as whispers, the beasts pursuing them were deafeningly loud. The two gathered twigs and dry leaves in a desperate bid for survival. With trembling hands, Mark managed to spark a small fire. The creature snarled and retreated, its fear reflected in the hollow depths of its eyes. Katie and Mark seized this fragile moment and ran, the tiny flame of their makeshift torch their only shield against the encroaching darkness. Meanwhile, Peter, Ben, and Ashley stumbled upon a worn-down cabin, burrowed deep within the woods. The door creaked open, revealing a decrepit interior that seemed to have witnessed horrors untold. As they ventured further into the shadowy cabin, their flashlights unveiled remnants of dark rituals and sinister symbols etched into the walls and floor. The air grew colder and heavier, like an oppressive shroud settling around them. Their sense of dread intensified. A sudden bone-jarring crash reverberated through the cabin, startling them to the core. It felt like the forest had lunged at them, trying to break inside. Trembling and fearing the unknown, the trio fled into the night. Yet, the forest had a different terror in store for them. As they emerged from the cabin, they saw a sight that sent shivers down their spines. The gnarly creature, who had terrorized their friends, was waiting outside. It loomed over them, its hollow eyes glaring down at the cowering trio, its body taut and ready to strike. The creature's snarl filled the air, and it lunged at the terrified group, its razor-sharp claws reaching out like nightmarish talons. But just as it was on the verge of making its gruesome capture, a sensation of intense heat engulfed the creature's back. It let out a loud, anguished howl and retreated into the forest depths, vanishing like a phantom into the shadows. In stunned silence, Peter, Ben, and Ashley turned their gaze to where the beast had stood. There, emerging from the darkness like avenging angels, were Mark and Katie, their torches casting eerie flickers of light on their determined faces. Well, I guess splitting up wasn't such a bad idea after all, Katie remarked with a wry smile, extending her hand to Ashley as the collective relief of their reunion washed over them like a tidal wave. Home alone in Willow Creek. The evening unfurled in an explosive symphony of chaos as the wind waged a relentless battle, howling like a tormented spirit and unleashing torrents of rain upon the world. Emily, left in solitude within her family's ancient, creaking house, felt like a solitary vessel adrift on a turbulent sea. The flickering lights cast eerie and elongated shadows on the walls, a sinister dance choreographed by the storm outside. Rain tapped incessantly against the windows, a dissonant percussion adding to the unnerving atmosphere that pervaded her solitude. As the night deepened, an inexplicable unease began to gnaw at Emily's soul. She couldn't help but feel unseen eyes watching her every move, a sensation that crawled through her like 1,000 tiny insects. A chill raced down her spine, but she dismissed these ominous feelings as mere products of her overactive imagination. The darkness clung to her, growing thicker and more suffocating with each passing moment. An uninvited dread descended, looming over her like a shroud. She couldn't shake the feeling that something was amiss, that she was teetering on the precipice of a nightmarish reality. And then, As if the fates themselves had conspired to terrify her, the power succumbed to the storm's relentless assault, leaving her in absolute darkness. Panic clutched at her chest, and she fumbled in her pocket, grasping a flashlight for a feeble ray of hope. She embarked on her trembling journey to the basement, where the circuit breaker held the key to restoring light to her besieged sanctuary. As she descended into the abyss, the creaking wooden stairs groaned beneath her weight. The dim beam of her flashlight revealed an eerie labyrinth of boxes and forgotten relics. As she neared the breaker panel, a soft, scratching sound reached her ears, a haunting murmur that crawled beneath her skin. She froze, her heart racing like a desperate beast pounding against the cage of her ribs. The scratching grew louder, becoming almost frantic, echoing through the basement like a ghostly symphony. Trepidation clung to her like an unwelcome companion, but she knew she had to confront whatever lurked behind that nearby door. Summoning every ounce of her courage, she approached the door cautiously. Her trembling hand grasped the doorknob, turning it with agonizing slowness. The door creaked open, and what met her eyes sent a shiver of terror coursing through her veins. Scratched into the walls were symbols, their strange and enigmatic designs etched in deep, grotesque grooves. They bore no resemblance to anything she had ever seen before, each symbol radiating an aura of hostility. Panic flooded her senses as she realized that she was not alone in the house, and that something sinister had left these grotesque marks. Her instincts screamed at her to flee, and she bolted back up the stairs, locking the basement door behind her. Emily's thoughts raced, trying to make sense of the cryptic symbols and the overwhelming sense of an ominous presence lurking in the shadows. Fear coursing through her, she decided to call the police, her trembling fingers dialing the emergency number. A voice answered on the other end, and she frantically explained the situation, the words tumbling out in a frantic rush as she felt the walls of her reality closing in. Minutes stretched in agony as she waited for the authorities to arrive. Every creak and rustle of the house's ancient timbers sent shivers down her spine, as if the house itself were conspiring against her. Suddenly, a loud crash shattered the silence, originating from somewhere above. She stifled a scream, gripping the phone tightly to her ear as the operator urged her to stay on the line, the disembodied voice offering a sliver of comfort in this nightmarish ordeal. With a deep breath, Emily slowly crept up the stairs, her flashlight's feeble beam illuminating the dark and sinister hallway. At the top, she faced the noise source, a shattered window, and the relentless rain pouring into the room like an evil river of despair. Dread washed over her as she realized that someone, or something, had breached the sanctity of her home, tearing through the fabric of her solitude. Before she could react, a bone-chilling whisper slithered through the air, a voice that sent icy tendrils of fear snaking down her spine. "Emily, you won't escape me." The words were haunting, laden with a sinister promise that sent shivers racing across her skin. She turned, and there, barely visible in the inky shadows of the hallway, stood a grotesque figure, a specter of horror, like a phantom summoned from the darkest recesses of her nightmares. Fear surged through her veins, her heart a frenetic drumbeat in the face of abject terror, causing every fiber of her being to implore her to flee, to find sanctuary. She sprinted, her footsteps thundering on the hardwood floor, aiming to reach her parents' bedroom and lock herself inside. As she entered the room, she couldn't help but glance at the full-length mirror on the wall, her reflection holding a sickening fascination. What she saw there froze her in place, her very soul recoiling in sheer, unadulterated terror. The rancorous figure that defied logic and reason stood behind her in the mirror's reflection. His twisted, gnarled fingers reached out, clawing at the thin veil that separated their worlds. Emily screamed, her voice a crescendo of sheer horror as she slammed the door shut and desperately searched for a hiding place. The figure outside the door began to slam against it, a relentless and violent assault, each impact sending shockwaves of terror through her. Panic engulfed her, her mind a whirlwind of chaotic thoughts as she sought a way to escape the clutches of this evil entity. With no time to spare, she made a heart-wrenching decision. Her hands shook as she climbed out of the window and onto the rain-soaked roof, the elements offering a cruel reminder of her vulnerability. She jumped to the ground, her bare feet soaking in the chilling puddles, as she sprinted towards her neighbor's house, where safety and a working phone awaited. Her trembling fingers dialed the emergency number once more. The authorities arrived reassuringly on a night marred by terror and uncertainty. They thoroughly searched Emily's home, every corner and crevice, but found no trace of the intruder. The symbols in the basement remained a cryptic puzzle, a riddle to which no solution could be found. Yet, deep in her heart, Emily knew that she had encountered something beyond the realm of the living, an entity that defied explanation. She knew that her world and her reality understanding had forever been altered. To this day, Emily could never feel at ease in Willow Creek. The memory of that terrifying night haunted her like an unrelenting ghost, a spectre that lingered at the edges of her consciousness, a constant reminder that the world was a far stranger and more mysterious place than she had ever imagined. Despite the reassurances of the police and her well-meaning parents, she knew the truth. She had not encountered mere paranoia or a figment of her imagination that night. She had come face to face with the otherworldly, with a realm beyond human understanding, and the scars of that encounter would remain etched in her memory until her last breath. Emily knew that some horrors were not bound by time or space, and that the shadows in the periphery held secrets that humanity was never meant to comprehend. Witches of Willow Creek. A young woman named Isabella lived in the heart of a quaint village, nestled deep in a forest shrouded in whispers and legends. She was a curious soul, driven by a relentless thirst for adventure, that often led her into uncharted depths of the unknown. Throughout her life, Isabella had grown up listening to the hushed and eerie tales of the Willow Creek witches. These stories painted them as bearers of evil powers and participants in wicked secret rituals. The stories were chilling, yet they awakened in her a powerful intrigue, compelling her to unravel the hidden truths behind these mysterious myths. On a moonlit night, when the fog crept and danced eerily around the ancient trees, Isabella embarked on a journey that would plunge her into the heart of those very whispers. With every step she took, the air grew colder, the silence more foreboding, and her heart pounded in her chest, a rhythm that mirrored the increasing intensity of her fear. In the enigmatic forest, she felt the watchful eyes of unseen entities bore into her, creating an unshakable sensation that sent shivers coursing down her spine. Amongst the gnarled roots and tangled branches, her path led her to an ancient and moss-covered stone circle, an ominous clearing that the locals believed to be the witch's secret meeting place. Moonlight pierced through the dense canopy, casting eerie and spectral shadows that danced around the stones like phantoms. Isabella's heart raced with anticipation, for she knew she had reached the place she had long sought after. Suddenly, an unsettling gust of wind swept through the clearing, extinguishing her lantern. Panic surged through her veins, causing her to tremble with fear, but she summoned every ounce of her courage and relighted the lantern. In that precarious moment, she saw them. The witches emerged from the darkness, their figures cloaked in tattered robes and hoods. Their eyes gleamed like the fiery embers of a dying fire, reflecting malevolence and an ancient knowledge that sent a shiver down her spine. "Who dares intrude upon our sacred ground?" hissed a voice from the shadows, its malevolence reverberating in the still night air. Isabella, her voice quivering but resolute, summoned her courage and replied, "I seek knowledge and understanding, not to harm or disrupt." The witches exchanged knowing glances, their faces hidden by the shadows of their hoods. After a moment of tense silence, the eldest among them, a haggard crone with a hooked nose and eyes that seemed to have witnessed centuries of secrets, stepped forward. "Young seeker," she croaked, her voice like the rustling leaves in the autumn wind. "Tread carefully in the realm of the unknown. Knowledge comes at a price you may not be willing to pay." Undeterred by the crone's foreboding words, Isabella nodded and expressed her genuine desire to learn. The crone, sensing the sincerity in her words, beckoned her forward. She revealed an ancient and weathered book of spells and incantations, a tome that held centuries of their dark craft. As Isabella immersed herself in the macabre and otherworldly knowledge within, the witches grew increasingly sinister in their intentions. What Isabella did not know, however, was that knowledge, especially the kind that the witches possessed, was a double-edged sword. As her eyes studied the pages with unwavering enthusiasm, the witches began to cackle and hiss before harmonizing in an ancient melodic chant. "Sit omnia potestas tibi scientia potestas mihi." A chilling sensation crawled down Isabella's spine, and her muscles tensed in response. She attempted to move, but it was futile. Her body had become a vessel of their evil power, transformed into the witch's living doll. Slowly the witches circled the young girl, their chants growing louder as she ascended higher into the night sky. They threw their hands into the air in unison, sealing her fate with a final, bone-chilling chant. Nunc sis unux ex nostris, nos iunge causam veneficae nostrae. In an instant, Isabella's body contorted as her once pale skin shifted to a faded, eerie green. Her nose is crooked, her body adorned with grotesque warts, her teeth yellowed, and her eyes burned like embers of a dying fire. The transformation was complete, and Isabella became another victim of her insatiable curiosity. The witches had ensnared her, manipulating her thirst for knowledge to serve their own sinister purposes. As Isabella gazed upon her grotesque reflection in the moonlight, the true cost of her quest for enlightenment became hauntingly clear. The ancient dark wisdom she had sought had come at a terrible price, leaving her forever altered and bound to the witch's coven, a living testament to the perilous consequences of venturing into the abyss of the unknown. Isabella's journey, which had begun with a simple desire to unravel the secrets of the Willow Creek witches, had taken an irreversible and chilling turn, forever entwining her fate with those who dwell in the darkest corners of human curiosity. The Willow Creek Cult. On a misty autumn evening, the ethereal veil of Willow Creek descended upon the world, casting an eerie shroud over the town. This was the night that Erin, a fervent investigative journalist, descended into its heart, her destiny entwined with the vicious rumors whispered through the town's darkened alleys. With relentless determination, Erin armed herself with a notebook brimming with empty pages and a camera ready to capture the unfathomable. She treaded into the enigmatic woods, where the tall, gnarled trees stood like ancient sentinels guarding secrets not meant for mortal eyes. As she ventured deeper into the woods, a chilling sensation settled over her, akin to 1,000 unseen eyes fixated on her every move. The air seemed to hum with trepidation and veiled horror, wrapping around her like a cold, clammy shroud. Her steps led her to discover an old and decrepit cabin, shrouded in a veil of shadows, its windows shattered. Vines had woven a twisted tapestry upon its walls, reclaiming the decaying structure. The sight alone should have been enough to deter any soul, but Erin was possessed by curiosity, her heart and mind locked in a relentless dance between fear and the thirst for revelation. She gingerly pushed open the creaking door, its mournful groan slicing through the stifling silence. The air within was a tangible presence, laden with a nauseating stench that seemed to originate from the depths of decay and something far more sinister. A creeping dread inched its way up her spine as she stepped cautiously over the threshold, the beam of her flashlight casting long, wavering shadows that danced like restless spirits. The cabin appeared to be a place of assembly for malevolent souls, its very foundations bearing witness to unspeakable rituals. Bizarre symbols had been etched into the floor and walls, each mark speaking of a sinister devotion. The further Erin ventured, the more the atmosphere clung to her like a heavy, oppressive shroud, suffocating her with its vile secrets. It was as though the very walls whispered in dark tongues, recounting tales of unspeakable atrocities committed in the name of an unfathomable power. Then, just as dread was about to consume her entirely, a rustling emanated from behind her, causing her to spin around with a heart-pounding urgency. The beam of her flashlight flickered, revealing a tattered rug beneath her feet. It was there, nestled in the very fabric of the cabin, that she discovered a hidden trap door. The moment hung suspended like a drawn breath as she hesitated, her courage and insatiable curiosity wrestling in the recesses of her mind. Erin mustered her will, her fingers trembling as she pried open the trap door. Below, she descended into a narrow, dimly lit tunnel that seemed to stretch endlessly into the earth's bowels. Each step further was a descent into a nightmarish abyss. The dread that clung to her thickened with each passing moment as the ancient whispers of the cult's loathsome practices resounded in her mind. Minutes stretched into hours, and time seemed to flip through her fingers like elusive shadows. But finally, she stumbled upon a chamber that froze her very soul. It was a place of wicked sanctity, adorned with ominous symbols etched in profane ink. Eerie altars, crafted for unholy rituals, defiled the sanctity of the room, casting an oppressive malevolence. At the center, an abhorrent statue loomed, a grotesque figure that seemed to observe her with an uncanny awareness. Terror coursed through her veins, but Erin was resolute in her quest for the truth. Her camera clicked, and her pen scratched against her notebook, recording the terrible tableau before her. The chamber's ground felt unnaturally cold beneath her feet, and an insidious chill permeated her bones. Faint, distant chanting echoed through the labyrinthine tunnels, intertwining with the pulsating beat of her racing heart. Panic clawed at her throat as she realized she was not alone in this forsaken labyrinth. She turned to leave, her steps hastened by a growing sense of unease, but she took a wrong turn in her disorientation. The labyrinth of tunnels conspired against her, twisting into a bewildering maze. Then, as if guided by some sinister hand, she stumbled into an obscure hidden chamber. Before her stood a ghastly congregation of cultists, their faces concealed behind grotesque masks that mirrored the malevolence that dwelled within their souls. Their chants grew louder and more frantic, echoing like a dark, pulsating heartbeat throughout the chamber. Paralyzed with fear, Erin remained shrouded in the shadows, her very breath suspended in her lungs, praying that they wouldn't sense her presence. The cultists had gathered around a blood-stained altar, upon which lay a young man, his wide eyes reflecting the terror that gripped his very soul. Erin's heart turned to ice as she witnessed the unthinkable ritual unfolding before her very eyes. The cultists chanted in a guttural, ancient language, their devotion intensifying with every incantation. A dagger, its blade gleaming malevolently, was raised high in preparation for the unspeakable sacrifice. Erin's instincts finally surged to the forefront, propelling her to break free from her petrified state. In a desperate bid for escape, she turned and fled into the darkness. Her frantic footsteps echoed through the labyrinthine tunnels, her flight fueled by the very essence of fear itself. She knocked over a precarious stack of crates, causing a raucous clatter that reverberated through the chamber, like the tolling of her own doom. The cultists froze, their heads snapping toward the source of the disturbance. Their malevolent gaze settled upon Erin in that dreadful moment, hidden in the shadows. A chilling tableau of terror ensued, with the cultists converging toward her location, their masks obscuring any trace of humanity. In her trembling retreat, she knew her chances of escape were rapidly diminishing. Yet, Erin refused to submit to the grasp of diabolic fate. She sprinted through the tunnels, each step bringing her closer to freedom. The cultists' relentless pursuit echoed behind her, their chants growing louder, the stench of blood and decay enveloping her like an ominous shroud. The labyrinth seemed interminable, a cruel riddle designed to trap her. But her determination to survive, to unveil the truth, propelled her forward. Miraculously, she stumbled upon the elusive entrance, and as she burst into the open air, the night seemed to gasp in relief. The sinister grip of the cult loosened, and she sprinted toward her car, the cacophonous footsteps of the cultists fading into the distance. The bitter presence of Willow Creek clung to her even as she sped away, like a haunting spectre that refused to relinquish its grip. But Erin never returned to Willow Creek. The chilling memories of that harrowing night remained etched in her psyche, a grim reminder of the horrors concealed beneath the facade of a seemingly peaceful town. The sinister cult of Willow Creek continued to practice its unholy rites in the shadows, leaving an indelible mark of terror on anyone who dared to uncover the unfathomable truth. It was a memory she would carry to her grave, a constant reminder of the darkness hidden beneath the surface of even the most serene places. Willow Creek Swamp. A treacherous and otherworldly swamp lay at the heart of Willow Creek, nestled like a vicious secret. Its murky depths were cloaked in an impenetrable shroud of darkness, a place so menacing that even the bravest souls dared not venture within. In hushed tones, the townspeople recounted the haunting legends that swirled like phantoms around the swamp. They spoke of a voodoo priestess, her soul trapped by her own sinister magic, cursed to haunt the swamp shadows for all eternity. In fearful whispers, they christened her the Voodoo Queen of Willow, a spectral entity whose reign was said to manifest as undead abominations rising from the mire to torment the living. This is the backdrop against which a group of audacious young friends, known far and wide for their daring forays into the abyss of the unknown, embarked on an ill-fated quest to probe the very depths of these harrowing tales. Leading the perilous expedition was Sam, a charismatic and fearless young man whose thirst for adventure was insatiable. By his side was Claire, his confidant, equally dauntless and astute. Nick, the resident skeptic and fervent science enthusiast, lent a measure of skepticism to the group. At the same time, Rose, the empathic and intuitive one, harbored a belief in the supernatural that transcended reason. On a moonlit night, the heavens veiled their stars, and a sinister canopy of twisted trees cast haunting shadows on the quartet. They gathered at the threshold of the foreboding swamp, where the air hung heavy with a sense of impending doom. "Are we truly going through with this?" Nick hesitated, his gaze fixed uneasily upon the swamp's ominous silhouette. Sam, the charismatic leader, brushed off his concerns with a chuckle. "Come on, Nick. You're not letting these swamp tales get to you, are you?" Claire chimed in, her voice tinged with bravado. "Exactly. This is just an adventure after all. What's the worst that could happen?" But Rose, ever attuned to the unseen forces at play, voiced her ominous concerns. There is a darkness here, an ancient enmity. We must tread with great caution. Reluctantly, Nick nodded, and the quartet descended into the enigmatic heart of the swamp. The beams of their flashlights pierced the inky blackness, revealing gnarled branches in the murky waters below. As they delved deeper, the air became increasingly oppressive, and the distant croaking of frogs contributed to the eerie ambiance. With every step, the swamp seemed to awaken, with shadowy forms shifting in the obscurity and eerie sounds echoing through the night. Their nerves were stretched to the breaking point, but their insatiable thirst for the unknown propelled them onward. The adrenaline of uncharted territory pushed them further into the abyss, and hours passed as they reached a clearing hidden within the swamp's sinister heart. An overpowering stench of decay permeated the air, and the mist thickened, obscuring their vision to mere feet. Suddenly, a rustling in the underbrush sent a shiver down their spines. "What was that?" Claire whispered, her flashlight trembling in her grip. Nick's skepticism wavered as he stammered. "It's probably just an animal. Let's keep moving." Their disquiet intensified, yet they forged ahead, their flashlights revealing the grotesque spectacle of twisted trees and gnarled roots. Then, an otherworldly chill ran down their spines, a ghastly moan that could only belong to the supernatural. Paralyzed by terror, they fumbled for their flashlights, illuminating the unnerving figures before them, humanoid shapes with hollow, lifeless eyes and rotting flesh. The legends were no mere tales. The swamp zombies had risen. In their horrified stupor, the zombies closed in, moving with a grotesque, disjointed gait, their ghastly moans echoing through the air. Sam's frantic cry shattered the suffocating stillness. "Run!" In heart-pounding frenzy, they turned and fled, their hearts thundering with fear. The swamp seemed to come alive, its darkness closing in around them, the undead relentlessly pursuing the living. Desperation gave rise to an instinctive decision, and the group fragmented, each member hoping to outwit their implacable pursuers. Claire stumbled through the marshy ground, the sounds of pursuit echoing in the relentless dark. She lost her footing and plunged into a patch of muck, struggling to regain her balance. A clammy hand clamped onto her ankle with bone-chilling intensity as she clambered to her feet. Her scream pierced the night as she writhed and fought to break free, the grip growing tighter with each agonizing moment. Meanwhile, Nick and Rose confronted their own nightmarish ordeal. Nick's skeptical inclinations were shredded to tatters as he grappled with the grotesque reality before him. On the other hand, Rose tapped into her intuitive faculties, her senses attuned to the ill-natured presence of the Voodoo Queen's curse. Sam, isolated and outnumbered, held his ground in the swamp's heart. His commendable courage seemed futile as the undead horde closed in. Just as he believed his fate was irrevocably sealed, the ground beneath him quaked, and a resounding roar echoed through the swamp. The cursed zombies hesitated, ceasing their assault abruptly. The earth trembled, the undead figures disintegrated into the muck, their mournful cries fading into the night. As the dust settled, the group reconvened, battered but miraculously alive. The swamp fell eerily silent, the oppressive darkness lifting as the first light of dawn approached. They retreated from the swamp, the unspeakable horrors they had witnessed etched into their memories forever. The legend of the Voodoo Queen and her army of zombies in the swamplands endured a chilling reminder of the hostility lurking within the shadows, a dire warning to those who dared to court the enigmatic heart of Willow Creek. The Siren of Willow Creek. The air was crisp and laden with the sweet scent of fallen leaves on that fateful autumn evening. Adrian embarked on a solitary walk as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long, wistful shadows through the dense woodland. The woods of Willow Creek beckoned to him, their ancient trees standing like sentinels, guarding secrets buried in the earth. Adrian's footsteps crunched softly on the carpet of dried leaves as he meandered through the forest, the fading light bathing the world in hues of fiery orange and deep purple. In the distance, a glimmer of movement caught his attention. A figure, barely discernible in the dimming light, stood by the edge of a tranquil lake. Intrigued, he approached cautiously, every step a whisper in the fading twilight. As he drew closer, the ethereal beauty of the woman unfolded before him, a vision that would forever haunt his thoughts. Her skin was as pale as the moon, contrasting starkly with her long, flowing ebony hair. Her eyes, dark as the lake's depths, seemed to pierce through the encroaching darkness, holding untold secrets and stories. She stood as if she were a nymph born of the forest, embodying its silent allure. Adrian's heart skipped a beat as he watched her from a distance, captivated by her presence. She seemed to be in a world of her own, a realm known only to her. He felt an irresistible pull towards her, as though some mystical force had taken hold of his very being. The beauty of this woman was unlike anything he had ever seen, and her enigmatic aura held him in its thrall. Days flowed into weeks, and Adrian's obsession with the mysterious woman deepened with each passing moment. He returned to the lake daily, consumed by the desire to catch another glimpse of her. His responsibilities and relationships, once important to him, began to wither as her image overtook his thoughts. The whispers of Willow Creek grew louder, tales of a mysterious entity that ensnared unsuspecting souls into madness. But Adrian, blind to the warnings, pressed on, his obsession with the woman intensifying. He painted her portrait precisely, capturing every nuance of her mesmerizing features. His poems and songs flowed like a torrential river, an outpouring of devotion to the woman who had taken residence in his heart. But she remained elusive, a distant vision that tormented his mind and refused to acknowledge his presence. As autumn deepened and the days grew colder, Adrian's grip on reality continued to slip. The rustling leaves whispered her name, and her silhouette haunted him in the inky darkness of the night. The townsfolk began to take notice of his erratic behavior, murmuring that the woods had once again claimed a victim, just as the legends foretold. One moonlit night, driven to the brink of desperation, Adrian ventured into the heart of the Willow Creek woods, determined to confront the woman who had become the sole occupant of his thoughts. The echoes of her laughter, both haunting and enchanting, guided him deeper into the shadows. With every step, he felt as though he was being drawn into an alternate reality where she held the strings of his fate. At last, he reached a small clearing where a gnarled tree stood as a sentinel, bathed in a surreal otherworldly glow. Beneath the ancient tree, there she stood, the woman of his obsession, radiating a beauty that defied the boundaries of the natural world. "Adrian," she whispered, her voice an enchanting melody. "You've come." Adrian's heart pounded in his chest as he drew nearer, compelled by forces beyond his control. "Yes, my beauty, I have," he replied, his voice trembling. "But I must ask, who are you? Why do you linger in the woods, always alone?" Her lips curved into a mesmerizing smile, and her dark eyes bore into his soul. "I am the reflection of your desires, Adrian, the embodiment of that which you yearn for, but can never truly possess." Adrian's knees gave way, and he fell to the forest floor, a jumble of emotions coursing through him, a mixture of love, longing, and despair. "Please," he implored, tears streaming down his face. "I need to be with you. I cannot endure this torment any longer." The woman shook her head, her eyes holding a sorrowful wisdom. "You cannot have me, for I was never yours to have. Your obsession is but a construct of your own making, a mirage born from your desires." Tears welled in Adrian's eyes as he watched her form begin to dissipate, fading into the shadows like a wisp of smoke. He reached out, his fingers grasping at empty air, desperate to hold on to her. At that moment, the total weight of his madness crashed down upon him. He had lost himself in a phantom, a ghost of his own desires. The realization shattered his fragile psyche, and he screamed in anguish, the sound echoing through the woods, a lament that would linger in the hearts of those who heard it. The following day, the townsfolk discovered Adrian, a broken and hollow shell of a man, curled on the forest floor, rocking back and forth, muttering incoherent gibberish. The only words they can discern from his ravings were, "I must have her." Before long, Adrian was committed to an institution, his mind forever haunted by the memory of an unattainable woman of Willow Creek's forest. His desire to possess her beauty had confined him to a world of narrowed thoughts and perpetual longing. In the town of Willow Creek, the legend of Adrian's madness lived on, a cautionary tale for all who ventured too close to the shadows of desire. It served as a stark reminder of the perils of obsession, a lesson etched in the chronicles of the town's history, a reminder never to heed the alluring call of the beautiful woman in the woods. The Willow Creek Mimic. The Henderson family's home was a melancholy abode, nestled deep within the heart of the decaying hamlet of Willow Creek. Surrounded by shrouded, foreboding woods, The dwelling served as a lonely outpost in a place untouched by the vibrancy of modernity. James Henderson, a man of middle years, possessed an unassuming demeanor that masked the complex emotions that churned within him. He stood as the patriarch of what appeared to be a conventional family, but the eerie mysteries that lurked within the dark woods cast a sinister pall over their lives. The tale of horror that would consume the Hendersons began on a fog-shrouded evening when James first bore witness to uncanny occurrences that defied explanation. Shadows danced ominously, their movements a grotesque mimicry of his own. Skepticism and dread gnawed at his psyche as he desperately sought to rationalize these unnerving anomalies. Was it the burden of his occupation weighing heavily on his mind, or perhaps an overactive imagination pushed to its limits? James struggled to dismiss his unease, attributing it to his wife's recent and tragic loss and a calamity that had left an indelible scar on his soul. But as days turned into weeks, a phantom figure materialized in his life, an evil twin who stood ominously by the wayside, its face twisted into a wicked grin. An icy tremor coursed down James's spine, and he grasped at the notion that it was nothing more than a trick of the light, a fleeting optical illusion. He yearned to banish the gnawing unease, desperate to evade the clutches of an ever-swelling paranoia that threatened to consume him. Yet, the sinister figure persisted, a constant and unwelcome visitor, lurking in the shadows, its watchful eyes fixated upon its prey. The reflection in the mirror, once a faithful mirror of James's soul, began subtly transforming. Warm, kind eyes turned cold, and a once loving smile contorted into a ghastly rictus of malevolence. James, his sanity beginning to fracture, decided to confide in his adolescent daughter, Jessica. He shared these terrifying phenomena, but in her youthful innocence, she dismissed them as mere hallucinations, a byproduct of her father's unrelenting grief. Days stacked upon days, and the malign presence of the counterpart in the mirror became ever more pronounced. It ceased to mirror James's motions precisely. Instead, it acted with an eerie autonomy, evoking a profound sense of vengeful intent. It hissed vile persuasions, urging James to abandon his human form and embrace its wicked existence. James's sanity was stretched to the breaking point as he realized he must unravel the mysteries concealed within the woods before the toll became irreparable. In search of solace and enlightenment, James ventured deep into the haunting forest, where the whispers of the demonic counterpart became more apparent, its incantations weaving a dreadful tapestry of terror. Guided by an unnatural force, he stumbled upon an antiquated, decrepit cabin concealed amidst the gnarled trees. As he hesitantly pried the creaking door ajar, a miasmic odor of decay filled the air, forcing him to pull his shirt over his nose. James carefully explored the room, discovering ink-stained pages from an ancient journal resting atop a beaten wooden desk. The journal belonged to a man named Samuel, a prior resident of Willow Creek, who had faced the same malevolent terror that now besieged James. Samuel's testimonials recounted the creature, a vile entity he had aptly named the Shade Walker. This dreadful creature thrived on fear, stealthily supplanting its victims and infiltrating their lives until complete assimilation was achieved. Terrified by this revelation, James knew he had no choice but to confront his sinister counterpart. Armed with newfound knowledge, he returned home, but as he hastily moved through the house, James stopped dead in his tracks upon passing a mirror. Upon gazing into the reflective glass, he was horrified to see his reflection utterly enthralled by the Shade Walker. The crooked grin etched upon his reflection's face filled James with abject terror as the abomination emerged from the mirror, a blasphemous caricature of his former self. Amid this horrifying discovery, James heard the innocent voice of his daughter emanating from down the hall. "Daddy, is that you?" A shiver shot down James's spine as adrenaline coursed through his veins. With his daughter at the forefront of his mind, James lunged at the Shadewalker, only to crash into an invisible barrier. A knot twisted in James's stomach as he threw his fists forward, only to have them slam fruitlessly into the mysterious invisible barricade. Unaware of the impending peril, Jessica greeted her father with an innocent smile. Her father looked down at the girl and enfolded her in his cold, lifeless arms. As James stared from the mirror, he saw the Shadewalker leering back at him through his own set eyes, a wicked smile crawling on its face. Days turned into weeks, and the genuine James remained imprisoned within the accursed mirror, a helpless witness to the Shadewalker's macabre masquerade. In her youthful wisdom, Jessica perceived the gradual transformation in her father's demeanor, yet she clung to fleeting, ignorant hope, believing that all would soon revert to normalcy. However, the Shadewalker unveiled its true malevolence on one fateful evening. It overpowered Jessica, bringing her before the mirror her father was trapped in. The creature fed on her flesh, leaving her lifeless and unrecognizable on the floor. The creature reveled in the grotesque act, its hellish laughter echoing through the barren abode as it bathed in the Hendersons' suffering before disappearing into the night. In the depths of the accursed town, the woeful saga of the Henderson family echoed through the time-worn trees, a haunting parable of the unnerving force that lingered within Willow Creek. The Shadewalker disappeared into the trees, vanishing into the obscurity of the woods, where it would continue its reign of terror. It preyed upon the vulnerable, leaving behind a trail of fractured lives and shattered souls in its wake. And within the confines of the cursed mirror, James's tormented reflection bore witness to a new addition to his cursed purgatory. The remains of his daughter now lay at his feet, a haunting reminder of the horrors that had befallen his family, to be viewed for the rest of eternity.